All right, guys, here we go. So step one, you know, I want you, this is what I do, and I want you to try to do the same exercise if you can. I want you to think about if you could snap your fingers and immediately go from where you are to a 10x level of service in your business. So just snap your fingers and immediately, whatever you see, even if you think you're like world's class best right now, what you do, what would, you can snap your fingers and you're 10x higher, what would that look like? What would, when you walk into a business like yours, you walk into another martial arts school, and if it had 10 times the service of what you provided for your current customers, what would that be? And so this is a little dream scenario. I take pen and paper. I have a lot of that next to me all over the place here. And I map out like what in the dream scenario would beat when I was at my best running martial arts schools, what would beat my best? How would I beat my best? What would that look like? All right. And so I start writing notes down like what would be different. And sometimes it's just aesthetics. Sometimes it's some bells and whistles. I wish we had maybe the funds to do, or et cetera, things like that. A lot of times when you write this down, you'll go to recognize that it really is simple things. And a lot of times we try to think in this grand scheme of like the aesthetics. It's got to be this, better shopping center, or a better location, bigger location. And that doesn't relate to better service. And so I'm going to say it again. What if you could snap your fingers and have 10 times where you are now, better service to your customers? And so one of the things that I know that we can fix today that you guys could 10x the level of the service you give to your students is just tracking their progress and their attendance. When you join the big box gyms and you're paying $10 or $20 a month, $10 or $20 a month, okay? I think right now I have 3 different gym memberships at these low cost membership gyms because I don't miss the $10 or $20. I don't like if I go one time in the month to that gym, I feel like I got my money's worth. But when people are paying you 200, 250, $300 a month for your quote unquote membership, and they're not coming, which means they're not making progress, that means they're going to quit. And out of sight is out of mind. So when they miss a class, it's easier to miss the second class. When they miss the second class, it's easier to miss 2 weeks. If they miss 2 weeks, obviously that means they're probably, one step out the door. And so that's how quick it can change. And you spend all this time marketing, paying money to go advertise, to get leads. And then you fight like hell to get your leads to actually show up to the appointment. Then you do this great job training your team so you can sign them up, close them. You feel like your product on the floor is really good, maybe even great, but you're not recognizing where people are in the progress. We get really excited when we sign them up. We sell them the idea of all this grand dreams of becoming the black belt one day and how it's going to feel and this amazing thing, but it's so far down the line, they are worried about right now, their experience right now. And so we get really excited. And the next time you get really excited about your student is when it's time to put them into the next level program. You kind of fall in love with them again. And then all these promises come out. And that's where I say proof has got to happen more often with your students. And the way you do that is you got to make sure they're showing up for classes consistently, to the point that when they're going to miss, they come and tell you first. And everyone here probably has an example where someone's walked in and said, "Hey, Mr. Instructor, I'm not going to be here next Thursday because I'm going to Disney World," or whatever it is. That means they had this accountability with you. What if you had 250 students that felt they had that accountability? And they almost feel like they schedule their personal life based on they don't want to miss a class because one, they love the product, they love the education, they feel like they're getting progress every single class, right? And so that's why we say, hey, when people leave the class, they should be leaving sweating and smiling. They should feel the progress, see the progress, and they should enjoy even when it's hard, right? So how are you tracking attendance? If you're relying on a CRM, first of all, CRMs are only as good as the person putting the data in. And so I've seen people in a martial arts school have a great, beautiful CRM that looks like it's doing everything right, but they have their people they're putting in there and scheduled for the wrong class. So they can't check them into the class they're supposed to be in. Or they're not doing it every single day. It's not a requirement. It's not a culture with the staff. And so they don't know for a fact the people who are supposed to show up today that show up today. Or sometimes they're like, you know what? Our accountability to our students is they can come to any class they qualify for. And so we don't even know if our people come on Monday or if they come on a Tuesday. How are you going to track somebody's progress when you're in a school? This is not a gym where people are on self training. People are coming in, they have a course study, you have a curriculum, hopefully, and you have people that are moving towards leveling up, right? They will kill for recognition. What's that recognition in martial arts? It's called a belt. That's a status. And so if you have those systems already in place, you're not leveraging the right way. So you can 10x your service just by making sure that you've got people in the right classes, right? They're on the right product. And then we make sure that the promise we gave them, we want to be able to show proof to them. And the only way we show proof to them is we've got to make sure that they're there every time they're supposed to be there. And when they're not, they need to know that we know they're not and that we care that they're not there. And what can we do to make sure that they've got the opportunity to know how to stay on course. So I don't believe you have to have a makeup class, right? If somebody is missing one class, I don't believe you. It's just acknowledgement that you know they're not there. They know you're not there. I'm going to take this to correcting on the floor. And you've heard me say this probably in the past few weeks. If a kid on your martial arts floor does something improper, maybe you have them all sitting down. You said, hey, everybody's hands on your knees. And this one kid puts his hands behind his back and he's resting on the floor. And you look at him and he looks at you. There's eye contact. And you recognize he's not sitting right. And he knows he's not sitting right. And there's eye contact. And you say nothing. In his mind, the kid goes, okay, Mr. Instructor told me not to do this. I'm doing it. He saw that I'm not doing it. He didn't say anything to me. So it must not be a big deal to him. Guess what? You've now taught that kid that your word is not that very powerful. And then the other people feel the same thing. And your culture erodes. Okay. And so when people know that you're not caring, well, same thing happens here. Somebody doesn't show up for class and no one notices. And they show up for the next class and nobody notices. Then after a while, they're like, oh, well, maybe they don't even care. It starts eroding the culture. But if they miss, and while that class is going on, 20 minutes into the class, someone's calling the person saying, hey, Mr. Johnson, we noticed your son's not in class today. Is everything all right? Oh, yeah, we forgot to call you. We had too much homework today. We had to take the car to get oil change. Our sister had this at school today. Okay, great. Hey, awesome. I'm going to make this a note so the instructor knows about why you missed class today. Will you guys be in your next class? Oh, yes. Great. Looking forward to that. I can stay ahead of that if there's a real issue going on. Something happened in their personal life that we didn't know about. I can be ahead of it. They got to know that you care. If you remember the saying, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and it's got to happen. You could 10x the level of your service in your business if you just know when people are there and when they're not, and if you could track their progress. To take it to the next level, how are you tracking people's progress? I know in academic school, they do teacher-student conferences. Maybe you should have some kind of check-in besides just your belt testings. So if you belt test 4 times a year, maybe twice a year, giving you guys an idea and a concept that I did implement in some of my schools, not in all, in some, where we would have teacher-student conference days, and we would have no classes going on. We're open. We scheduled appointments. The student, parent, instructor would have a sit-down meeting, not with the salesperson, with the instructor, looking at the progress. We did not do it for all students, to be transparent. We did it for people once they hit a certain level in the system. And so like typically when they're about 18 months, 24 months before black belt is when we start these conferences, and we do them twice a year. And so we took it so serious, we didn't have classes that day. There'd be 15, 20-minute appointments somewhere around there, and they'd be back to back, and we'd open up a big schedule for that. One of our schools had to have 2 days of this because of the amount of students we had there. And the people that fit in that rank level, we'd sit down with them. We'd look at where they were in the progress, where they're ahead, where they're behind, what they need to be working on. This is above and beyond a belt testing. This is not a pop quiz test. It's coming in, sit down. Nothing's going on in the school. It's not a quick conversation. It's a preparation that we have to put into to make sure we know where our students are. It put pressure on the staff to make sure we're in tune with our students. And we had a better product from that. So I started with the idea with this. What if you could snap your fingers and 10x the level of service in your business? What would it be? I know what I've always done when I do this exercise is I always think about big things. And then I have to remind myself, service. I didn't say that I've got to make it smell better and look better. Maybe it needs to smell better. Maybe your school needs to smell better. But what would it look like if you could do that? What are you, by the way, holding your company back because you're not the right person to do some of these things? Maybe the culture of your classes could improve better if you just had more training or better training with your staff. It could be sometimes things like that. Okay. All right. And then I'll finish with this is I know this is like oversimplification when I say this, right? But when everyone believes in a business or an idea, success it's inevitable. When everyone, now everyone doesn't mean the world, but everyone means the people that are in that culture, that structure, that business. So for you guys who are working for someone, or if some of you guys here that are going to be hiring people, the question I'm going to ask is, one, how bought into your own North Star? How bought in are you to your belief of you're going to get where you're going? Because you know you're going to be challenged. You know the world's going to throw these curveballs, right? Yesterday was 9/11. Go back to 2001. Man, you're talking about a curveball for everybody in our country. Just recently, COVID. Like these curveballs happen in life. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So how bought in that you're going to win because you believe in your North Star, because you're so tied into your purpose of life, not just your why, but your purpose. Then the question is not a but then is how well is your team, your staff bought in? You guys right now that are on this call working for someone else, you need to be bought into the mission. But beyond that, you got to know what your mission is, not just your job and what you're doing, but what's your mission for your life? You guys got to be mission driven for life. And by the way, your mission doesn't have to be your job. They can be different things. You can have a job and still have a mission of how you want to spend your life. But how bought in are you? And so when everyone believes in the idea, right? Our country was founded on an idea. When everyone buys into it, success is just inevitable. And so when I've been off course in my business or my personal life, a lot of times it's because I've gotten off course on my mission or my purpose, and I have to resell myself first before I can resell a staff member or a customer. And so if I could 10x the level of service in my business, my snapping my fingers, because you can really, if you want to, you can get really focused. You got to do the same thing on your belief system. Because if you get a little lost in your belief, and by the way, if you can't explain why you believe what you believe, it's not your belief. You're borrowing it from someone else. So how bought in are you? When we do our one-on-one calls, one of the things that you guys can do better on is making sure that sometimes, instead of kind of shooting all over the place, being very direct on the one or two things you really need to get better at. And the way you get better is you get better knowledge, and make sure you're not making the same mistakes over and over again. You solve the problem. So your mistakes or your needs or your where you need to go next in your business keeps getting bigger. Right? You got to, it's like playing a video game. If you're on the same level forever and you can't kill that boss at the end of it and you keep getting to the same boss, can't beat it, man, you got to change the strategy a little bit. Or maybe you got to learn from your own past of like, what have I done? And like, how do I fix me? And I've had to use technology so I can remember things. I program things in my phone, I program things in my calendar, because I know like I got too much going on to remember everything. So you can 10x level your business service pretty quickly if you just know exactly where you're going. And then inside of that, how strong is your belief in where you're going is where you need to be? How often do you evaluate yourself? You're going to sit down with your students twice a year. You're going to sit down with your staff twice a year, 4 times a year. How often do you sit down with yourself and just kind of do a check-in? Are you on the right mission? All right. It's very important, because when you get distracted and you guys got a lot of stuff going on in your life, you got kids, you got grandkids, you got different businesses, you got the world stuff going on, you got the politics going on right now with everything. It's very easy sometimes to take your foot off the gas, and then the service level drops in your business. Then you get distracted and you start panicking and you start making the wrong decisions because you don't know what you're chasing, because you're not on the right mission. Okay. All right.